Folks, and welcome to another campaign update. How are you doing? My name is Feena Benoit, and oh my gosh, I'm looking at my hair. I had it up early and I just took it down for the show. And so today we've got a great show, folks. It is a day that we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, and it should be to everyone's heart that is involved in politics, because one of the most important duties of the government is the criminal justice system. So today we are talking criminal justice system. And today we're going to have a couple of guests. We're going to have the governor candidate, Rob Latham from Utah. And we are also going to have Miss Rebecca Whiting, another U.S. Senate candidate from Minnesota. So I do have a campaign update for you guys. I've been gone, but before I get to that, thank you for watching the show. If you're not following or you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, why not? Please do so. And I want to thank all of you for watching and for giving us this space and time in your day, whether it's Tuesday or Monday that you're watching this, or if you're watching this on a Wednesday when I'm not even streaming it, even better. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting libertarian candidates. But let's bring our co-host on. It is none other than the U.S. Senate Libertarian candidate from Maryland, Mike Scott.
Good morning. Good morning. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Yes, sir. And we are rejoicing, and I am glad.
And I love the topic. It's near and dear to my heart. It's criminal justice. I had two brothers in Joliet and one cousin who was a guard at Joliet. So I have people who've been in and out of jail in my family, and I've seen criminal justice from both sides of it. And we are the land of the free.
Amen.
Changed my mind.
So before we get real into the nitty-gritty of the criminal justice reform, I do want to present my campaign update. I've been gone for 2 weeks.
You've been gone for 2 weeks. What the heck have you been doing? You were in Miami having fun.
I've been in Miami.
Food and Wine Festival. Oh my God.
Yes. This next clip will probably make you, I don't know, it might make you hungry. Hungry for more, that is. All right, so I'm gonna play it real quick. Stand by. Benoit, and I approve this message.
They could get their card and still not pay taxes on their product, and that's your right as a patient. But if you want a reg, you're going to pay 30% more taxes for what? For what? You know what I mean? So out-of-state people can come in here, build up our properties, build up our prices, and you know what I mean? It's kind of it's aggravating.
As you can see, this amendment's a little more complex than what we thought. How do you think this will affect
That's a great question. So here's what Amendment 3 does one thing, and that is it legalizes possession for adults 21 and older. Then after that, it's up to the legislature, the governor, to implement this law, this constitutional amendment into law. So what's going to happen after that is they make the decisions, what the taxation is going to be, how many people are allowed to sell it, what are the limits on strength and things of that nature. If they do nothing, there is a trigger in there that after 6 months that the existing dispensary company, the 22 existing dispensary companies get to sell recreation. That's so they can't stall and do the things that they've done in other states where it gets passed, but then nothing happens. So my encouragement to you and libertarians, but also anybody who sees this, no matter what your political affiliation is, after this, if you care about cannabis, then it's going to be your responsibility to then contact your legislator and tell them to do it right. do it the right way. All those hopes and dreams that you might have on this. One of the most common questions we get asked, why is there no home grow? Well, we could not include it because there is a single subject rule, and it would have gotten thrown out by the courts. So home grow would either have to be a separate amendment, or maybe people could persuade their legislators after this is done. Think of this as the next most important step in a broader scheme of reform that is necessary. So this isn't the war. This isn't the end of the war, but this is the most important battle of it.
So we haven't won, but it's a step in the right direction, I feel.
It's the largest step in the right direction. And the reason I say that, and I don't say that lightly, is because this is the way that we end people going to change. And if we can keep people's freedom intact, that is the largest step that we can take forward. Everything else is important. What can come after we stop incarceration?
That's a good point.
Right. All right. So that was my campaign update. Hope you liked it. So
More words with it. What I wanted to know what was going on because I saw everything beautiful and I was hungry.
So the first part of it was in Jacksonville at FinFest, and we were taking out my new microphone here, and I don't know if so it's got a little tiny lavalier here on it, and I'm not sure what was going on, but like we kept getting a lot of background noise from that. So yes, we were at the FinFest. Oh my gosh, I'm totally gonna scroll it back to this one part in the video because it was so cool from FinFest. And if you blink, you missed it. If you blinked, you missed it.
I blinked.
I know you mean. So there's these cool dudes. They were one of them's actually a cinematographer, and he here it is. And he was like, all right, let's get some pictures, but can you make us like with laser beam eyes? And I was like, yeah. So here we go. We'll play it real quick.
Was that you gave him an explosion?
Yeah. You want to watch it again?
One more time. One more time.
So that was a good time. We had some awesome food, met some great people. I was out there with the Blood of Tyrants. And that, folks, campaign update. My campaign now has a new top donor to the campaign after this Miami trip. It's Dan, Taxation is Theft, Berman. New top donor in my campaign. We went to Miami, and of course, Miami is very expensive. So you combine that with the amount that he's already donated, plus the donations he made, the in-kind contributions. Dan Berman is now my new top donor. And folks, I'd like to challenge you. Come on, let's go. Let's go. You want to beat Dan Berman? Beat him.
Looking for a new top donor.
Looking for a new top donor. So with that said, I want to cut to one of the commercials for Liquid Freedom. That was the energy tea that we were promoting out there. And so this event was over 11,000 people. at the food and beverage convention. And so we were selling Blood of Tyrants, which is a wine. It's a Merlot. And it's they also have a Liquid Freedom, which is an energy tea. And if you're not familiar with the quote, where the name come from, Blood of Tyrants, is from the Thomas Jefferson quote, who, folks, if you're wondering who Thomas Jefferson is, it's not your Facebook friend. He is one of the founding fathers of America. And he had a famous quote saying that the tree of liberty from time to time must be watered by the blood of tyrants, hence the name Blood of Tyrants. And so that is a new company coming up. They're less than 2 years old, and they started out at political rallies, political conventions. So they've already got this brand going. They came to Miami. Of course, Kate Prather from Texas is involved. Dan Taxation is Theft is involved. There's some other people involved. And this is going to be a great brand coming up. A lot of folks, I mean, I watched in the military, Black Rifle Coffee and Liquid Death coming up just based off of guys in the military that wanted something, masculine sounding to drink with, their protein shakes and whatnot. But anyways, let's get to one of those commercials, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about criminal justice system. And oh my gosh, Mike, you talk about your cousins, firsthand experience. All right. Oh, I'm in solo layout. Why? Oh my gosh, exit solo layout. I was like, where'd Mike go? Why isn't he here?
I've been right.
So, folks, I know I've been talking a lot this morning, and you know what? I'm gonna be real with you. Today is gonna be a talk a lot episode for me. I will talk a lot because I have a lot of experience on this. So,
before you get started,
okay,
just a quick campaign update from me. Just throwing one out there real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle Mike was in the polls. I was at 3% last month. Right now, it looks like I'm about 6%, and still I rise. I'm claiming that missing 11% also. My name is getting out there. I'm not getting top donors like Feena, so I need you guys to spread the word because I don't have 20 million to spend.
You're polling higher than me, but we both doubled our numbers.
We both doubled our numbers.
1% to 2%.
And I'm going up. I'm telling you, these guys don't understand. Angela also just got caught cheating on her taxes, I think. And she plans on paying it back. And I said she plans on paying it back because she got caught. That's why I call her Angela also bought. Just like Wes Moore, the governor, got his Bronze Star, he didn't. Just like lockdown Larry Hogan shut the state. My opponents in this race are problematic. And I'm more qualified for the job than they are. Vote third party, vote libertarian.
Yeah.
That's me.
So I'm not sure. We are supposed to have a guest today, but they are not here. And so before I get into my rant, my diatribe here, let me check my messages, see if they have sent me a message. We're looking for, nope, not here. No messages here. No messages. Wait. Okay, so Rebecca Whiting says, I'm logged in, but says no one is here.
Let me talk for 2 seconds. I got a couple things I can say about criminal justice in general. While you
I was going to say, let me talk for a few seconds, and then
I have no idea how to pull
you,
it in.
and you can you get a hold of Rebecca and send her the link?
Sure. Let me see if I can.
Okay, great. So, folks, my last tour in the military, I was a prison guard. I was a prison guard out in Pearl Harbor. I watched people, go to jail for anything from child pornography, murder, to just not showing up to work because they didn't want to keep their job and they were imprisoned. I watched people gamble their lives away on a plea bargain because it was going to be too much for a actual trial. The prosecutors, the defense attorneys would work to convince the accused that this is the best route, is through a plea bargain system where they don't have a trial. where they don't have a option of appeals. And for folks that you don't know, the military court justice system is separate from the American criminal justice system. Now, I do have experience with the American criminal justice system too, not from myself per se, like firsthand. Like, I've never been arrested. The worst thing I've ever done is a speeding ticket. In fact, I've got 2 speeding tickets my entire life. I am a squeaky clean kind of person. If I think that it's going to get me in trouble, I don't do it. I'm not saying I don't break the law. We all break the law as soon as we go on that I-95 going 95. All right. So my brother, on the other hand, complete opposite from me when I was growing up. And from the age of maybe 12 or 13, I've been visiting my brother in and out of prison. From the age of 19, he plea bargained his life away, life without a chance of parole on a plea bargain. And he did that at 19 years old. He's still in jail. He will be in jail for the rest of his life. What folks don't understand, when they say life in prison, they do not mean 20 years. They mean your entire life until you cease to breathe, until you are no longer alive. That is life in prison. And a lot of folks take that plea bargain because the prosecutors and the defense attorneys threaten them with the penalty of death. They use the death penalty as a bargaining chip to get them to admit to crimes. Maybe they did commit them, maybe they didn't commit them all. And like my brother, his case is not unique. You don't know his name because it wasn't like a school shooting. It wasn't a mass shooting. It was, yes, it was murder, and that was an awful thing. And, this is one of those things where you would think that I would be somebody that's going to be soft on crime, but I'm going to tell you folks, I would not be soft on crime. I would abolish the plea bargain system because I believe that for us to uphold the Constitution, that includes all the amendments. And no, you can't bargain your way out, because when you bargain your way out, so I've talked to you about people that are, victims of the criminal justice system, but we're not talking about the victims of the crimes themselves. When we have a plea bargaining system, it isn't just the criminals that are, getting this, I don't even know the word. They're not getting the right system. They're not getting the right process. They're not getting their trial. They're not getting their trial by a jury. There's no evidence that comes into court. So that also screws over the victims. And we all know those stories of someone who maybe rapes a woman and they get out on a plea bargain for time served, and they were in jail for like a month or two. And then that woman now has to go to the grocery store and see that dude, right? It also sets people up to really screw over the rest of their lives whenever you have something like the probation, right? So you're giving people that have a hard time following the rules even more rules. Now they have to be in at a certain time. Oh my goodness, we got Rebecca. I'm filibustering. Hey folks. Hey.
Hi.
We have.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
Welcome, U.S. Senate candidate Rebecca Whiting from Minnesota.
I believe you have an echo in the background because I think you're watching it at the same time. So you got to cut one of them off.
How do
good?
I don't. This is the only screen I have up.
Oh,
She's fine.
I'm looking for for some reason I hear an echo. I hear a double talk, and it just went away. Never mind.
Okay.
Okay, welcome, Rebecca. We were just, I was just telling folks my experience in the criminal justice system, and honestly, if you did show up, I could probably talk this entire time.
I don't know. The link and it just had a black, and I was like, "Is this
no worries?"
No, and I finally sent you a message. It was like, "I am here." I don't know.
Yeah. So, Rebecca, I'm gonna give you the solo layout, and I want you to, tell us what you're running for and a little bit about you, what the constituents in your area are looking for. And yes. all your 2-minute elevator speech.
Okay. Well, I'm running for U.S. Senate in Minnesota, so I'm up against Amy Klobuchar, who you probably recognize that name, and there's a reason, because this would be, I think, if she win, or whatever happens this election, this would be 24 years of her being in the Senate for Minnesota. And Minnesota politics are a little different. We're a deeply entrenched blue state, but I think that we're a deeply entrenched blue state simply because they have mastered the political system. It's not because people around here are happy with the Democrats. It's simply because the Democrats have gained control, and they are they know, but the Republicans in this state are not strong enough to kind of wrench it back and have this tug of war in the state. Anyway, so I am running for U.S. Senate against Amy Klobuchar as an anti-war candidate. I was a Army combat veteran from Iraq. I was a medic. So, when you're a combat veteran as a medic, you're in the middle of pretty much the worst of everything that's going on. I was in Iraq during 2 very key points of the war early on. So I was already in the Army when 9/11 happened, for instance, and then, 9/11 and then the war in Iraq. And I was immediately sent over to Iraq with 2nd Infantry Division, and was attached to engineers and infantry and artillery units. And then even as a woman was out in the line with those when, things were happening. So I was in Ramadi in 2004. I was in Baghdad during 2006. And really, if your history of the war during that time, the Al Anbar province, the Sunni Triangle, was really like the epicenter of all of the bad parts of the war for 20 years, really. So the entirety of the war. I'm also running as we have a small farm in northern Minnesota. Where I live is up near the Canadian border. So we raise dairy goats and sheep and cows and pigs here, and I do farmers markets. So I'm really big into like the local food production. I've been on the board for our farmers market for, I think it's like 10 or 11 years at this point, help keep it going. So really that's kind of where my heart lies, my passion is the farming and the small producing, those kinds of things. So from an ag perspective, I see the overreach of government regulation and control, and how that has forced production out of the hands of producers, because people like myself don't have the financial means of being able to overcome the regulation that simply has regulated prosperity out of agriculture. And we're in we don't, right now we're compensating, but 20 years from now, we're going to be in crisis mode for food in the United States. And I see it happening because I'm being at ground zero. But I also am like a homeschooler. We have a large family. So, from the mom perspective of me, I'm very concerned about the future of the kids, my children, and what kind of environment they're going to grow up in and eventually raise their own families in, because of the government overreach, the control of the military industrial complex, the corporations that have really, latched onto the legislative, the entirety of the government, and then used it to warp their own self-interest, always at the cost of us small people at the bottom. So that was probably more in 2 minutes, but there it is.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your service. You are sitting here with 2 U.S. Senate candidates that are veterans too, looking to change the world. And I think with your experience in the farming industry, I mean, we've got some great opportunity. Is it my side that's echoing?
I have no idea.
I can hear it now.
Yeah.
It wasn't just you.
I think it's the
no, that's a kid. That's a bingo night.
Mike, to the kid.
That's a bingo night.
I thought I had locked the door.
So there are committees in the U.S. Senate that I think a real farmer, we would benefit as Americans to have a real farmer sit on that committee for the U.S. Senate. And I first met Rebecca on another podcast from the Green Party. I think it's a Green Party. I can't remember the name of that. No, it was the Candidates for Assange.
Yeah.
And I was really impressed with what you had to say there, and your experience in wars. we're veterans here. Your stories matter. You know, veteran stories matter, you know, and we're all unique. We all have different experiences coming out of that. And thank you for sharing yours with us today. So do you have any experience or of criminal justice system, or what's your thoughts there?
Not directly. I've always kind of like, that's one of the benefits I think I have actually from running for a seat like U.S. Senate is I don't really have any skeletons in my closet. But you know, I'm running against Amy Klobuchar, who was the Hennepin County attorney before she became U.S. Senator. And Hennepin County is where Minneapolis is in Minnesota. So you know the history of. Sorry, I really thought I'd locked the door, but now I have a distraction.
Do you want me to cut to commercial?
No, it's fine. He's fine.
Okay.
But so Minneapolis is, you know, the epicenter of like the George Floyd, literally the city was burning in 2020. And we all know that because, I mean, it was plastered everywhere, and where the Black Lives Matter movement kind of started. And if you drive through Minneapolis today, you can still see like where the city burned and nobody's gone in and rebuilt. Like it's just empty. All those buildings, everything is just gone. And Amy Klobuchar was county attorney before she became U.S. Senator. So she ran on being tough on crime, tough on, you know, anything that a county attorney has to say to get elected. You know what I mean? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The way that she went about it was, for instance, and you can Google this, his name was Marvin Haynes, Haynes. He was a young Black kid living in Minneapolis. And there was a murder that happened in Minneapolis, even though he had an alibi. And I think he was only like 14 or 15 when this happened. He had an alibi. His mom was like, no, he was in bed all night sleeping. And Amy Klobuchar and her team not only arrested him and completely trampled his rights, like literally a kid, but he spent 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. They forced witnesses to claim that, you know, these sworn statements saying that he did it, but it was all fake. That happened at the hands of Amy Klobuchar, and now she's running for U.S. Senate. So Minnesota has a long history of the system acting unjustly towards people that it feels like it can just trample, you know, and this is a perfect case of that, where even though we do need to make sure that our justice system is serving out justice, we also need to make sure that the justice is correctly pointed at, you know, helping the right people and going after also, you know, like making sure that it is actually just and not being used as a weapon towards people that have little means to defend themselves.
That right there. So we were talking before you came on a little bit about the plea bargaining system. And folks, I want to let you know today, 97% of all people in federal prison are in there right now under a plea bargain. That means they have had no trial. There has been no jury to convict them, and there is no appeal process. If they are in a punishment that is probably, you know, it could be anything from like they didn't get enough punishment, like what I was talking about right before you came on, or they maybe have gotten a too severe punishment. There's no appeal process. There's no appeal process to that. These people have been denied their constitutional rights. And
That's Marvin Haynes.
Yeah.
Getting out of prison, 19 years, I believe, for a crime he maintains to this day he didn't commit.
Well, like I said, he had an alibi, and that didn't matter. Yeah. Did not matter at all, because, you know, they needed somebody to take a fall for this murder. And what happens is they put somebody in prison that didn't do it. And then the person that actually did do the murder is still walking free. Right. So for the last 20 years, that person has been free. And this guy, he's a guy now, but he was literally a kid when he went to prison.
Yeah.
Well,
So my when I was in Hawaii, I got kind of similar story to that, but I think it ended up a lot worse. So there was this kid in Hawaii that he was, just raising hell during the COVID lockdowns and everything, stealing cars. The cops knew exactly where he lived. They've picked him up before.
Mhm.
They knew where he lived. They knew where he liked to go. They've done all this investigation work. And instead of, doing kind of like a stakeout, if you will, and getting him where, like, at home, like surprising him,
Yeah.
like that's kind of like in the military, that's what we would do, right? We would, if we know where they are, we know where they're going home, we
Mhm.
would wait for them, right? They went after him. And in the middle of downtown Honolulu, it was just bullets everywhere. They shot him, they killed him. He was 16 years old. And there were people in the car that got hit as well. And this is, we've got to be smarter about this.
Mhm.
There's got to be smarter ways. And right now, I think all right, police officers to me are a lot like people in the military. And one of the things I learned when I became a prison guard for the military is this very important thing. It's no one joins the military to be a dirtbag. No one joins the military to become a criminal. Police officers don't go into police work to become a villain. For the most part, I hope that. I have to have hope and faith in people that they don't go into this arena to become a super villain. But that's what happens, another incident in Hawaii, and I'm talking about Hawaii because people on the mainland never heard about what happens in Hawaii. I know bad shit happens on the mainland, and I know that because it gets the news, right? News happens. So there was during the lockdowns, there was another kid, a group of teenagers actually in a vehicle, an SUV, going down the road, and they were speeding. And two cop cars got behind them and ran them off the road. Bad accident. They fled the accident.
The cops did?
The cops fled the accident. There were witnesses. The cops fled the accident and did not call for backup. One of the witnesses called emergency services. And those same cops that ran them off the road for speeding, these teenagers, they came back like 20 minutes later, like, what's going on here? Like, they didn't know what was going on. And, of course, now we all have, this is like our ultimate weapon. It's a cell phone in our hands because we can prove that something did happen.
Well, that's what happened like with George Floyd. The only reason that blew up to the degree of which it did is because a 17-year-old girl had her phone out.
Yes.
And literally recorded him die. So in a time period when in Minnesota, and it was probably, very similar in Hawaii, where the lockdowns were rather draconian, right? So like people are already anxious and desperate. And, like for us, we'd lost our jobs. So like there was all this disruption. And then you throw into something like a 17-year-old girl taking a video of a Black guy getting choked to death by the police in the middle of the streets in Minneapolis. And it just blew up. And that's what happened,
These, you guys are talking about, and these are intimate cases. These are single cases that had far-reaching implications. But I don't think people understand in the U.S. the truth. 0.7% of the U.S. population is in jail. And that's a big number, seeing as we got 300 some odd million folks. So almost 1% is significant.
Yeah.
And that's up to 21 to 25% of the prison population in the freaking world. All right. And about 40% of those are for victimless crimes. That's what people don't get. Whenever we really need criminal justice reform, because whenever you break a law, somebody with a gun comes to see you and that person can take your life. It doesn't matter what the law is. So right. I'm very careful with criminal justice reform. And I got friends who are cops and I got friends who are criminals. I just think the entire system needs an overhaul because we're the land of the free and maybe 25% of the people in jail in the world are here. And that's due to Holocaust Joe and that 94 crime bill. We've gone up since the 80s, about 500%. If you count all the people in jail, it is abhorrent. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like
the thing is that we assume that like this part of the system exists for us to be able to help us have better lives, you know, that we can have access to, if something happens, to be able to, you know, help us when somebody has done something to us. That's not the case at all. In the United States, the justice system doesn't exist for our benefit. The justice system exists to keep people under control. And here's another thing that
you're not even doing a good job of that. So I want the role of the criminal justice system is to punish people that have done bad. And it is to be a deterrent for people to do a deterrent for people to not do crime and to do good. Right. And so one of the places that we fail really bad with our criminal justice system is we hide it. So when someone does bad, it's hidden. No one knows about it. We don't have trials. Anytime there is a trial in America, everyone's glued to the TV because we want to see the criminal justice system working. We want to see bad people put away and our streets safe. And we want to see that crime is punished. And we want to see the innocent exonerated. And we want to see victims get retribution. We don't want our stolen goods sold at a police auction.
Right.
Let me say that again. We do not want our stolen goods sold at a police auction. That's qualified. Was that no, civil asset forfeiture? There it is.
Yeah, my husband used to drive a tow truck, and he was always, you know, picking up things that the police had you know, taken from, you know, whatever. And you don't even have to have actually done a crime. You just have to be, you know, they suspect you have, and so that they can take your stuff. But what actually happens is that the justice system is used as a weapon against people who refuse to fall into line. They want people to be obedient. And when you are not obedient and you are simply exercising your rights as a person, this is their avenue for being able to keep you and force you back into their bubble.
Yeah, it is an avenue. It's very systematic when you go in there. What do you got there?
That's the back of my business card. That's what you give to the cops. If you see my business card and I gave you one on the back, it's either the 10th Amendment or that. I do not comply. I do not answer questions. I do not consent to a search. Am I free to go? That's all you say to the cops because they are not on your side. I'm throwing that out there, and I have cop friends, and they agree. So throwing that out there.
Well, I live in a small town. I have cop friends too, you know, but all it takes is getting that one cop that has a chip on his shoulder on the day when you have to interact with him. And, you know, the implications of that can be quite far reaching for you as a person.
Yeah.
And so the criminal justice system right now, we're kind of talking about like the higher level, the higher echelon when people go to prison. But the criminal justice system, all the way down to the traffic cop, the guy that's sitting outside on the side of the highway, pointing at what looks to be like, we're veterans, right? We know that PTSD exists. And you know what really triggers people's PTSD? People that have been, you know, had weapons pointed at them, having somebody on the side of the road with a weapon pointed at them. Maybe not a weapon, but it looks like it, a radar gun like that. You kidding me? And you're going to have that sitting on the side of the road and they're just sitting there waiting for something to happen. Well, especially during COVID, these times that we're talking about where there were raids, looting, people's property being damaged and stolen. These cops were just on the side of the road getting their quotas. And once again, goes back to that thing. I don't think that cops join to be a cop, to be a supervillain, which I think that sitting on the side of the road pointing a radar gun at people is kind of super villainish. That's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? I think that they did that to help people. I think that people become cops, but to help people, to help stop bad things from happening. And where they need to be is in these places that these businesses who pay their tax dollars, they pay state, county, city, federal taxes, And they have to go out and make an additional purchase for security guards, the mall cops, the cops in Walmart, the plainclothes people that are like walking around in Costco that are looking for people that are trying to steal. Like
in Maryland, those folks are actually all controlled through the police department. So instead of them working overtime and getting paid whatever Walmart pays them, that's done through the state, and they get overtime for that.
See, that's double dipping. They're getting extra paid for their job that they're already doing. Yeah. My homeowner association, the community where I live in, right? Last year, before I came here, they actually paid the city of Jacksonville $16,000 over what they had already allotted. Like they allotted for it to be like $8,000 worth of people, like cops, to come through the neighborhood and just drive around at, peak hours. When I say peak hours, I mean like in the midnight to like 4 a.m., those hours, right? And so they overspent by $16,000. And do you know when they came through? At lunchtime. They came through at lunchtime, had a nice lunch at our amenity center, used our bathrooms, and we paid them. And we paid them that. And I think that's a racket. We are already paying this fee through our taxes, and criminal justice system. Holy smokes, Rebecca. That's all we've talked about. Rebecca, what do you want to talk about? Let's change this conversation. Let's get back on to you. I'm so sorry.
No, I want to bring up one last thing that's kind of relevant that just happened in Minnesota is the state patrol, which we call up here just the road sharks, because all they do is pull people over from like a distance for like, expired plates or something.
We call them road pirates.
Yeah.
Road pirates. Yeah.
And so we had a state patrol guy that no lights on, no emergency, and he had a history of poor behavior, and nobody ever did anything about it. They knew this guy in the department. They knew that he was a problem. He was flying through an intersection, a busy intersection, like I said, no lights on, no emergency, and crashed into a vehicle and killed an 18-year-old girl. That was just like, she had either just graduated high school or was just about to. That was who died. And you know what? He kept his job for months kept his job. And I think that there would be less problems if the police and the deputy and the sheriff's departments, the police department and sheriff's department, were keeping their people more accountable. If they actually would take seriously and have an avenue, not just using the avenue that I think that they must have these in place. They're like, we know this guy's going to be a problem. But they ignore it and they let him keep happening, whether it's for the police unions or whatever. Still, like this didn't need to happen. And he kept his job for months. He's still not in prison. She's still dead, 18 years old.
I love
the justice for that.
I want more body cams. I love the idea of body cameras on police officers. You know what else I love? I love the idea of all police officers in marked cars in uniform at all. Like if they're on the clock in a marked car in uniform, because if something does happen, I want to know where the good guys are. I want to know who I can run to for help.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the uniform necessarily means a good guy. And by far, the vast majority of cops are good guys, the vast majority. However, you don't get to claim good guy status if you knowingly allow people to step all over the standards that they're supposed to adhere to. I mean, that's the bottom line. I get it. You guys are good guys and you don't want to buck the system because you got that blue line and you guys have made it us or them. But when I'm us and one of my guys is messing up, I'm still loyal to the people I'm supposed to be serving. And that's the bottom line. You got to watch where your loyalties lie. Yes, it lies with your boys because they're with you on the line, but it should also lie with the people you're sworn to serve and protect. Mm-hmm. So tolerating is choosing. Stop tolerating people who suck.
Right.
Oh, all right. So we've talked a little bit about criminal justice system, and we're gonna keep hammering it. All right. So Amy, all right, so Amy Klobuchar is your Democrat candidate. Who's the Republican candidate?
His name is Royce White.
Okay.
He's an interesting person. he kind of is a new name, so he came up, and I don't know. There's a lot of information out there. I'm not really sure what to do with. So I mean, you can Google his name. He's all over Twitter. He's got this stuff, and he's kind of got this pretty big character arc, I think. So he was part of the BLM protesters in Minneapolis. He's from the Rondo community, which is like that inner city St. Paul, Black part of the community that really has been hurting pretty badly. Not just because of COVID or through this, but leading up to that, like tensions were already, kind of bad in that part of the state, especially in the metro, where you have a lot of poor communities. And so he grew up there, and this is what I know of him: single mom, made something of himself as an NBA basketball player, because I've stood next to him. He's giant. So seems he's pretty young. He's like 33 years old. I think his disadvantage is that he runs his mouth and he doesn't know how to control it. So I don't know. Like Amy Klobuchar, the last time she ran against a Republican, she won by 23%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And so then the Republicans put up, this guy. I'll be surprised if he doesn't do
not
worse.
quite the landslide out in of Hawaii. Like when I ran in 2022 for U.S. Senate, the Democrat took 98% of the vote.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I took one. Wow. The Republican took one.
Yeah. So I'd be very curious about like your guys' ballot access laws too, because in Minnesota,
I live here in Florida. I live in Florida now, but Hawaii. Okay, so Florida has one of the most expensive ballot accesses. $10,000 to get on the ballot for a statewide race. $10,000 or 200,000 signatures, whichever one you want to do. But if you get the 200,000 signatures, you still have to pay the state of Florida to count and verify those signatures, which is going to come to a grand total of per signature. Guess what? $10,000. So you might as well just pay him $10,000. Now in Hawaii, it's $35 and about 200 signatures. I can get that in one afternoon.
What? We could too, like single-handedly almost.
Yeah.
In Minnesota, it's 2,000 signatures, which isn't an extraordinary amount, but we have less than 2 weeks to get them. Mm-hmm. And so if we're going to run multiple races, then that's 2,000 per signature. And then we have to, figure out, especially, with our manpower, is how do we do that in 2 weeks to get more than one person on the ballot? So that's
I want to ask
money.
We're automatically on the ballot in Maryland as long as we pay the entry fee, which is like $200, but we can lose ballot access. I think if they don't get at least 1.5% or something like that, or 1% of the vote, we'll lose ballot access, and then we'll have to go through the churn again, which the idea sucks.
Yeah. We have to get 8% in a statewide race to be able to just have ballot access. So the 1% doesn't matter at all. That's just to stay as a recognized party in Minnesota, is to get the 1%.
So Rebecca, I do want to ask you, why libertarian? What's your favorite parts about libertarianism, and how long you've been in the party? Get that little good stuff, and then go for it.
Yeah. So, I always get asked, like, because usually people have like this story of, well, I was a former Democrat, I was a former Republican. Like for me, I wasn't ever anything else, I think. Because I came out of the Army, out of back-to-back deployments to Iraq. I did 7 years in. Really, when I joined, I thought I'd be a lifer. I loved being in the military. I loved the hard work, the challenge, the discipline, all of those. I loved my job as a medic, but then Iraq happened, and for our deployments, we had extraordinarily difficult deployments because of where we're at and because of the job I did. So I did backpack deployments, and my husband and I had just gotten married, and I was like, he actually asked me to just get out, we wanted to have a family. We wanted to do that kind of stuff. And especially, which we could have still done to some degree being in, but I wasn't doing well after my deployments to Iraq, because when you're losing people while you're deployed, you're not losing just, like some, you're not responding to just some emergency on the road, but those are your friends you're losing. So we had an extraordinary amount of losses. I was going through a very deep grief, a lot of anxiety, PTSD kinds of things, and got out of the Army and really needed to be able to help myself get better and heal. And so that's what I tell people, like, oh, where were you doing before? Like, I was healing. That's what I was doing. And so I didn't actually join the Libertarian Party because I kind of rejected the idea. Like, I was anti-political. I was anti-government. I was like, this whole system sucks. Like, I always recognized that it was the Democrats and the Republicans together that helped work to perpetuate the war on terrorism, the Iraq, the Afghanistan, all of those things that I was directly impacted by. And so we moved up here to Minnesota. I'm originally from New Orleans, and I married somebody in the Army from northern Minnesota. That's how I ended up here. And then in 2020, all the lockdowns started, and I recognized that immediately for what it was. How dare they tell us that we're not allowed to work. We're not allowed to go and, go into town and get things that we need. We in Minnesota just was like, shut everything down. We lost our jobs. We lost a lot just because of, they were just like, well, hey, now we're doing this and we don't care how it impacts you. You're being selfish for complaining about it. That was the attitude. And so I jumped in 21. Because northern Minnesota didn't have a libertarian presence. The Libertarian Party had essentially been centralized in the metro where the population is in Minnesota, right? And there wasn't anything really in rural Minnesota. And I reached out to a friend and I was like, hey, where is the Libertarian Party? Like, I want to get involved, but where are they? And he was like, well, there's nothing up here. And so I said, well, let's start something. And how do we do that? And so we did. We just started an affiliate in the state in northern Minnesota, and there wasn't anybody up here until we created it. And from there, it just kind of started spiraling. So that was in 21. In 22 at the state convention, I got asked to run for an at-large position on the executive committee and won. And then by 23, well, probably most state libertarian parties have had a little bit of, there's been some turmoil, I guess is the way I would explain it. And so in 23, I got asked to run for chair. And so I did. I didn't end up being the chair. I ended up being vice chair. But then the chair resigned. So I became chair anyways. So, when it came time to getting involved, that was just it moved very quickly, but I feel like a small party, there's a lot of opportunity. All you have to do is be available and be willing and be proactive. And you can do almost, like you want to take on this, thing, just go do it. Nobody's going to tell you no. We want people to just go and, whatever it is to fight back against the state. I'm always looking for people, especially now as a chair of the state party, to be able to help us in our efforts to go against the state and their overreach. And so that was really what I did. I was just like, well, what do we need to do next? Because I'm ready to do it. Oh, there's nobody doing it. Well, let's start it and get it going. And that's how I kind of moved up. So.
Nice. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on and talking criminal justice system with us today. I appreciate all of your thoughts, all of your stories that you shared with us.
Thank you for your service, and your kids are beautiful. And
did you hear the one crying just now?
I hear the one in the background. That's why I was giggling, because it was a really sad story, and I'm like, oh, she doesn't think I'm giggling at the story.
I was trying to text her, come, you need to come get her, but that hasn't happened yet.
How close are you to Hibbing, by the way?
About 2 hours central. So Hibbing is more west or east. I'm sorry, and then we're directly in the center, but up north.
My mom and my sister used to live up in Hibbing in the Iron Range. So, and I believe one of my twin brothers, one of the younger ones, is still out in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, but thank you for your service, and thank you for running, and thank you for being logical and intelligent and libertarian.
Thank you for having me on.
That's
I'm going to give you the solo one more time. Give us your 30 seconds, who you are, what you're running for. Give us the good short one, because then we got to go to a Chase Oliver update.
Yeah, my name's Rebecca Whiting, running for U.S. Senate in Minnesota. I'm running on an anti-war platform, trying to keep the deep state, the corporate interest out of D.C. that would keep the war machine going, and the military-industrial complex that profits off the existence of war. I'm working to help free the working class, who I'm part of. You know, like my husband and I both work, and that's pretty much all we do. But the regulations and the laws and things like that have kept us intentionally from being able to be prosperous and being able to use our time in a way that actually benefits us. I recognize that for what it is and would like to take that down quite a few notches. And then also defunding the government. That's kind of what it comes down to, because they're $35 trillion in debt and nobody is even talking about it. They're not talking about it because they did it. This is their fault, and nobody wants to discuss it or confront it because they know that this is at their doing. So that would be another thing that I would be very adamant about should I ever get to Washington, D.C.
So where can people follow you and find your website? If you want to give it a shout out, because I don't have, I should have done that. I should have showed off.
No, it's fine. I'm on Facebook, Rebecca Whiting for U.S. Senate. I'm also on Twitter. I don't do a lot on Twitter though. And then I have a website, Whiting4 and then the number 4 Senate.us.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to get to our Chase Oliver campaign update. Thank you again for coming on. And I hope to see you in the Senate. All right.
Thank you.
If no candidate receives over 50%, then the top two candidates head to a runoff. Now we know this race will head to a runoff.
New focus on the influence of libertarians in Georgia's Senate race. There's another player in the mix.
Voters deserve a chance to have their voices heard, and they shouldn't have to be lumped into one box or the other and have to be shamed into voting into two parties.
These two major parties aren't addressing their pain.
The CBO themselves said the Inflation Reduction Act wouldn't actually reduce inflation. Are you actually reading the bills, or are you just taking Chuck Schumer's word for it when you vote on these things? We obviously need to audit the Fed. Once people get a little bit more education about what the Federal Reserve does, they'll want to see it ended. You know, we claim to be the light of liberty unto the world, and if we seek to hold that mantle, we have to fix our broken immigration system. Big Pharma is subsidized to the tune of billions of dollars a year by our government. The only thing Democrats and Republicans can agree on is how to spend your money out of thin air and devalue our dollar. We need to bring market forces into healthcare that are going to lower the prices. I believe that we need true justice reform at every level, from the police to the courts to the prosecutors. And we need to do away with mandatory minimums. We need to do away with qualified immunity so that law enforcement can be held accountable in a court of law just like any of us. And that's something that I fought for. I've gotten tear gas in the streets while I protest for justice reform. Don't take politicians' advice for your health care. Take your doctor's advice. Why is that the radical idea and not the rational idea? I want to take power out of the hands of government and return it to each and every one of you, because that's where it resides. If not voted was actually on the ballot, they would win nearly every election in this country. Most of the people who vote represent themselves as independent, so it's important that we have voices that are independent of the two parties on stage. I want you to be able to start a small business. I want you to have control over your own body. And I want you to be able to live your life as your authentic self in peace. I'm Chase Oliver, a candidate for president, and I approve this message.
All right. Hello, Amber. How are you doing? Welcome.
Doing good. My house is a little bit of disarray, so we're just gonna keep the camera off today.
Okay. So what's going on in the Chase Oliver campaign this week?
Well, last week Chase was in Texas and Mike was in, I think, Virginia Beach. Let me check. Yeah, he had a meet and greet in Virginia Beach. I just wanted to make sure that was right.
Okay.
But I did get some pictures. Not a whole lot of pictures from Texas. I think we have. Oh, and he went to California. I missed that. That was the beginning of last week was crazy.
Are you going to share the pictures, or do you want me to?
I got it. So there is a picture of Mike with the group. Some more meet and greet photos. 2 more. 3 more. 4 more. 5 more. 6 more. 7 more. 8 more. 9 more. 10 more. 11 more. 12 more. 13 more. 14 more. 15 more. 16 more. 17 more. 18 more. 19 more. 20 more. 21 more. 22 more. 23 more. 24 more. 25 more. 26 more. 27 more. 28 more. 29 more. 30 more. 31 more. 32 more. 33 more. 34 more. 35 more. 36 more. 37 more. 38 more. 39 more. 40 more. 41 more. 42 more. 43 more. 44 more. 45 more. 46 more. 47 more. 48 more. 49 more. 50 more. 51 more. 52 more. 53 more. 54 more. 55 more. 56 more. 57 more. 58 more. 59 more. 60 more. 61 more. 62 more. 63 more. 64 more. 65 more. 66 more. 67 more. 68 more. 69 more. 70 more. 71 more. 72 more. 73 more. 74 more. 75 more. 76 more. 77 more.
I think Mike does really well with the meet and greets. I've always appreciated Mike Tremette's public speaking and just how he connects with people in general on the one-on-one level.
Yep, I agree.
The back of the pickup truck. Oh, there's Chase Oliver.
There's Chase. I thought I had another one from Chase.
So is this in Texas, you said?
I'm not sure if it's in Texas or if it's in California, because we had a little California trip. We had a meet and greet in Santa Clara, and then we had a meet and greet, or not a meet and greet. We had a fundraiser in LA with Ovens.
Is that Kyle Pierce?
I am not sure.
Hair, it looks like Kyle's hair. I'm not sure either, but Kyle has beautiful curly hair and it's like about that color. So I don't know. Kyle, if you're watching, if that's you, hello. So what's going on next week or in this week? What's up this week? And then we'll talk about next week.
This week, Chase is going to Pittsburgh, and I believe we're going to have a meet and greet there. And Mike is doing a rally in DC, not the Rage Against the War Machine, but a different one.
The one for the
Sunday
Republican?
with Tulsi Gabbard, the Freedom Fest or whatever it's called, or something like that. Tulsi and Kennedy, maybe.
I think so.
Save the Republic.
No, not Save the Republic. It's the other one.
There's the Save the Republic, and then there's Rage Against the War Machine. Same weekend. One's on Saturday, one's on Sunday. Is he going to the Friday afternoon tea?
I think it's the Saturday one.
Saturday, that's the Rage Against the War Machine.
No, it's the other one.
No. Okay. Well, he'll be there.
Next Tuesday, you can let us know where he went, and then we'll know for sure which one he did.
All I get is like a little like, oh, we're going to this rally at this time, and that's all I have so far.
Tell him drop me a line if he's in DC, because I'm going to Rage Saturday. I can't make the other one Sunday because I'm going to be at Frederick at a church doing some stuff up there with a conservative group. But I'd love to see Mike. I'll grab him a beer, or we can sit and discuss some stuff.
I will absolutely let him know.
Let him know I'm around. Thank you.
I saw you had a video posted in here. Is that you, or is that from last week?
That may have been from last week, but there was one that I didn't get to show.
Well, let's play it. I'm going to play it, okay?
Okay.
Fox 59 is your local election headquarters, and tonight one of the candidates for president was right here in Indianapolis. Libertarian presidential candidate Chase Oliver spoke tonight at an event held by the Indy Rainbow Chamber. Oliver's the first openly gay candidate to win his party's nomination for president. Tonight he spoke about his party's goals in Indiana and across the country.
Our biggest goal is to bring out more voters in the process who just haven't felt represented at all by Republicans or Democrats, and we want to make sure there are more options on the ballot that voters can say, hey, that person represents me and my values. I'm going to actually get off the couch and go vote.
The Libertarian candidate for governor, Donald Rainwater, was also at that event tonight. You can see more of that interview coming up Sunday morning at 9:30 on this week's edition of In Focus.
Meanwhile, last night's debate continues to make headlines in this race for the White House.
All right. Yeah, I think that probably was from last week, but that's a great one. I'm glad that the news is actually reporting that he's the first openly gay person to run for president for our party. I think it's great to know that, because, you know, when we don't make a big deal out of it, because, you know, libertarians, we don't think that should be a big deal. And so a lot of times we don't make it a big deal. I've already started talking about Hawaii earlier. So like when I was in Hawaii, the chair for a long time, and she's passed away now. She was the first transgender person to run for governor.
Amazing.
but no one will ever, you don't hear about that. She did that back in the early 2000s, and then 15 years later, the Democrats are, putting out that, oh, somebody in New York, first transgender person to run for, and they have to say a major political party, which I think this year we're going to do some shakeups, and you're not going to be able to say that we're not a major political party. Mike Scott, you're holding them 5%. I'm holding 2%, and I really think those are you're like 6. Yeah, I think that Ted Brown in Texas, last time I checked, he's polling 5.
Folks don't get. I used to think there were 7. There's 11.
Mm-hmm.
11 U.S. Senate nominees, including Rebecca Whiting, who was just on, and all of us running as a group. If you really want to shock the system, get 5 libertarians in there. If you want to disrupt and fix America, get all 11, and we'll bring you a good system.
Yeah.
11.
So this is a good year for us, and Chase Oliver is doing great as a candidate, and so is Mike Tremat. They are really representing and helping us, the down ballot candidates, just by running a good campaign. And I gotta say, I am so incredibly jealous of Chase Oliver's hair all the time. Perfect. If I could, I would. This is one of the reasons why I'll probably never get to run for president, because Mike, you got it easy, shave, but the hair, oh my gosh, his hair is just perfect. Perfect. And so well spoken. Complete sentences go a long way in today's rhetoric. I was watching some clips of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and they're, in their sentence, if you were to write this sentence out, they're missing some key grammar words. They're missing the words that make it English. Other than that, they're reading a bullet points.
It's sad.
It is sad. So you got what's anything else happening in the Chase Oliver campaign that you want to share with us for this week?
We should have some new content coming out on TikTok. We do really, really well on TikTok. I think one of our videos we posted last week had like 1.5 million views on it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to get, all I need is 100 followers on TikTok. If I can get 100 followers on TikTok, I'm going live with this show on TikTok. That's the requirement. So I am a little bit backed up on making the clips. I think I'm maybe 2 weeks behind on making the AI clips that are like 2-minute clips that I do post on TikTok. But I would love to just keep on growing this. So folks, if you see those little 2-minute clips out there that are in the vertical alignment, and it's only 2 minutes and it's this show, share it. It's free. Share it. Because that's how we get our candidates out in front of people right now. We are the 3rd largest political party, and we are making literal mountains out of molehills, of money. We are trying to go further, do more with the money that we get. And I think that should be a testimony to how we will work with the government and the tax dollars. The more we can do with what we have, it shows the more we can do with the future. So, all right. Well, Amber, anything else you want to share with the Chase Oliver campaign right now? How's your cat?
Oh, she's good. She ran around for probably like 20 minutes, and then she's sleeping on me now.
Oh, I got to give you a cat update.
Have you figured out where you can tell us where Chase is holding the victory party when he runs president?
I think I can tell you that it's Dallas. I think LP Texas has already been advertising.
Okay.
So kind of forced my arm there, but it's fine.
We're going deep in the heart of Texas.
Yeah. Okay, Amber. Well, thank you for coming on again, and thank you for the Chase Oliver campaign update. Please pass our high praises to the candidates, Chase Oliver and Mike Tremat, and I look forward to seeing them out on the campaign trail soon.
Say hi from Mike.
We'll stay safe in this weather, Feena.
Oh yeah, there is a hurricane coming. Another one.
I didn't know.
It's Florida.
Yeah.
I love your face when you said that. You're like, it's Florida.
It's Florida. You got to expect it. So, all right,
Yeah.
Amber. See you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.
Y'all.
All right, folks, we've got another guest, but before we bring that guest up, I do want to, he sent me some commercials, and let's see if I can play some for you. I want to play one commercial. So our next candidate is from Utah. He is the governor candidate.
He goes by Rob, but it's J. Rob Latham, and he was actually on the debate. I watched it. I watched 95% of it. I cut off the last 5 minutes because that's just a goodbye. But he was on the debate on the stage with the Republican and Democratic nominees, and he kind of wiped the floor with them. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen. So I apologize that this is a YouTube channel, and like this is why I say please give me the original copies, because otherwise you're going to see like a bunch of advertisements on the side and it's going to be small. But anyways, here we go.
Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
I'm Rob Latham, and I'm asking for your help to liberate us in Utah from those who try to bully us, boss us, and buy us. You can fight back against bullies by standing up to them, exposing them, and voting Libertarian. Don't be pushed around. Join me at Free Utahns, because we're better when we're free.
All right. And welcome, Rob Latham, the gubernatorial candidate for Utah. Hello, Rob.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Feena.
Welcome. Welcome.
Good morning. So, Rob, before we get all into it, I'm going to give you the solo layout. Please give me your 2-minute elevator speech, what you're running for, your name, where to find you, and all that good stuff. And go.
My name's Rob Latham. I am running for governor of the state of Utah, liberator for the people of Utah, because we should always remember that the state is not the same thing as the people. I am the Libertarian nominee. I am the first non-incumbent party candidate to qualify to reach that threshold for the Utah Debate Commission debates. You can find more about our campaign at lathamforutahns.us or freeutahns.org. Those work. And I'm running on a platform to address concerns that Utahns have raised as their top concerns. The Utah Foundation does a biannual Utah Priority Survey, and in 2024, the top issues, of course, the top issue is housing, and I'm promoting the Free to Build initiative, which is being championed by the Libertas Institute, which is our market-oriented public policy research and education organization in Utah. And the idea is to do things like reduce minimum lot sizes, reduce setback requirements. By increasing the supply of housing, we can increase housing attainability. But in addition to that housing issue, other issues that Utahns have expressed concern about are government overreach. And libertarians are very good on curbing government overreach. I am an attorney. I represent citizens accused of crime. I represent parents responding to DCFS petitions, meaning that the government's coming after your family. And I would like to see protections put in place so that government overreaches less. One way we can do that, of course, is through jury nullification. If you are on a jury and you believe that the law is unjust or being unjustly applied, you can acquit, even if you think that person is technically guilty. And there's a great American history, just tradition of doing that. This is one way how slavery was ended, was by jurors in the North and the South saying we're not going to convict people accused of harboring runaway slaves anymore. And then in addition, a lot of Utah voters are concerned about politicians not listening to voters and political partisanship. So I am a champion of what's called proportional ranked choice voting. And this means that if a community of interest gets 10% of the vote, then they get 10% of the seats. If they get 40% of the vote, they get 40% of the seats. And that way we, not necessarily majority, but we get proportional minority representation, but it's still majority rule. And we saw examples of this in Costa Rica, where the Libertarian Party down there received 10% of the national vote, and they got 10% of the seats in their National Assembly. And that fixes gerrymandering and makes it gerrymander proof. It fixes the spoiler effect. And so we think that that can be a more inclusive governance going forward. So those are kind of my top issues. Of course, I can talk about all kinds of other stuff. I see that you're talking about a lot of my work I'm a criminal defense attorney. And by the way, just for what it's worth, those of us who are trying to improve that system, we're now using the word criminal legal system. We think justice gives too much credit to the system that we are practicing in right now. We don't see a lot of what we would consider justice, a lot of equitable or fair outcomes in that system. And so until that system is really worthy of the title, we think criminal legal system is how we ought to be describing that.
I like that. That's smart. That is smart. So I feel like I've got to, because I put this out, and I know you're going to give me pushback.
It's all right. We're libertarians. This is how we do, right?
Yes, yes. But I will say the data is on my side. How do you feel about the plea bargaining system?
You know, I follow Clark Neely with the Cato Institute, and he's a huge champion of getting rid of plea bargaining.
I gotta say, you're the first attorney that's been like, I'll listen to this.
Oh no, I'm keeping an open mind on it. I will say readily, it's a regular part of my practice. And so if it went away, it would just be interesting to see what impact that would have. But I see his point, and I think it's a good point. Some say it would bring that system just crashing to a halt, and maybe they would only focus on real crimes with real victims, rather than just a lot of the churn that they do, to kind of feed the meter with these lower level things that are kind of easy convictions. So, from a libertarian perspective, there's a lot to commend that policy. But I also look at the reality of a lot of people who still stand for trial do get convicted. And I've been in a couple of cases where I thought my client was factually innocent and they still got convicted. So a jury trial is not necessarily a guarantee that.
But there's always an appeals process that you have available if you go to trial by jury. And a lot of folks don't realize that when you take a plea bargain, that's your last shot. That's it. There's no oversight. There's no chance at appeal. It is the final verdict.
Well, and I'm an appellate attorney too. And there are some ways to appeal even when you plea. And every state's different, by the way. In Utah, you can enter a plea bargain agreement, but still, as part of that agreement, say, I want to appeal this legal issue that came up in our case. And so sometimes those kind of things do go up to the higher level as well. But you are, on most counts, right, that when you plead guilty, you give up that right to appeal, and you just kind of have to live with the sentence you have. Of course, if it's an unfair sentence, you can appeal that too. At least in Utah, you can. So anyway, but yeah, abolishing plea bargaining is an interesting concept. I'm kind of agnostic on it, but I follow it. I think there's a lot to, that we ought to take seriously about it and look into it further.
Well, that's the first step. A lot of folks, when I tell them this, that are lawyers, they look at it as that's their bread and butter, because 97% of people that are in prison right now are in there under a plea bargain. And the people that, there's a lot of lawyers out there that have never actually gone to trial. They've never actually gone to court They've just done plea bargains and paperwork the whole way. And, that really would shake things up in the way that you said, where only the cases that are actually have victims would go to trial, and it would decrease our prison population. And some of the folks that should be in jail that cause the most damage, they never serve any jail time. I'm gonna go ahead and rat out my competitor, Rick Scott, defrauded Medicaid and Medicare for billions of dollars, got slapped on the wrist with a $600 million fine, the largest settlement in U.S. history against the healthcare system. And he spent 0 time in jail, became the governor of Florida, and is the U.S. Senate. He's in the U.S. Senate. He's our current U.S. senator. And
Isn't America great?
He is a
Only in America.
Only in America, right?
Real quick, and I wanted to hear your words on this because I've been saying it to my kids forever. It's STFU Friday every day. You never talk to the cops. And I was watching a lawyer on TV that said anything you say can and will be used against you, but they don't necessarily, anything you say may not be able to exonerate you. Can you let folks know why hushing is the best idea, or do you disagree with that?
No, I completely agree. And Mike, I saw you hold up your card. I of course, have my own similar card. I don't know if you can see it. It's written very small, but it's something I pass out to folks. Yeah, it's too bright. Oh, there you go. But that at the bottom is, don't talk. And then on the back, it's actually your, rights. There we go. And that way you can just hand it to the law enforcement officer and you don't have to talk. You just zip it. Because so many times I look in police reports and then and they say, as soon as I stopped the car and the defendant opened their mouth, I was overwhelmed by the odor of alcohol. And so if you can just not open your mouth, hand them the card. And I have actually heard from people who have done this and said, yeah, I had this encounter and they, let me proceed on my way. I lose business by doing that, but I would rather have that kind of scenario play out than have a situation where they do try to talk themselves out of trouble, but they end up talking themselves into more trouble. I link to my attorney website, roblatham.pro. And there's a great video. It's like a 40-minute video on not talking to the police. It's about 40 minutes, very good quotes from Supreme Court justices and other legal scholars on not doing that. So yeah, I see so many cases where my clients who are accused aren't doing themselves any favors by talking, and they end up talking themselves into trouble. Rather, if they had just maybe kept their mouth shut and exercised their right to remain silent, they wouldn't have the case that they had. And if there's a case with it, and people say, "Oh, you're getting criminals," well, we libertarians know that there's a difference between crimes with victims and victimless crimes, right? And so if you have a crime with a victim, that's something where there's going to be evidence, and the person doesn't need to talk. In fact, in a lot of cases I represent where there are victims in there, something stolen, somebody's assaulted, there's evidence, right? The person accused doesn't need to say anything to, have them convicted or exonerate themselves. Now, they might have a defense, and that sometimes happens. But, the victimless crimes, we can just set those aside. And so I think that's a win-win for society, that we're really focusing on real crimes with real victims.
So you running for governor is a very unique position, considering the powers of a governor. And today we're talking about the criminal justice system. You're still a lawyer, not former. You're still a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, are you tracking, or do you know of any people that are currently serving that you would be willing to pardon?
So in Utah, unfortunately, we do not have the pardon power. Yeah, every state is different on that front. Now, we can appoint members to what's called the Board of Pardons. So would I be appointing people to that board, with a mind that they would be looking at things from a libertarian perspective? Sure. Now, we actually just had, unfortunately in Utah, our first execution in the state in the past 12 years. And I was invited to go speak at a rally at the Capitol on that last month. And I was looking through our state constitution, and we do have what's called the reprieve power in Utah, and some other states have this too. So where they're lacking commutation power, they can reprieve a sentence. And in some states, I think Pennsylvania did this, I want to say Ohio maybe did it too, where the governor said, I am issuing a reprieve through the end of my term. Actually, I want to say it was either Washington or Oregon, the governor up there did a similar thing. And it was court challenged. Actually, it was interesting. The person who was scheduled to be executed challenged their reprieve. And the court actually upheld it and said the governor does have this power to issue a reprieve. And the governor in that case, and this is my position, is that we don't, do a good job of teaching people that killing is wrong by killing people. Just we need to set the better example. And it was definitely a sad case in Utah. It was a horrible crime and whatnot, but we need to be better than that. And I think restitution would have gone a long way toward doing that. So I asked the governor to issue a reprieve. For whatever reason, they decided not to go that direction, and so they carried out the execution. So anyway, and there's Utah being Utah, so we have that history of how we became a state, and the pioneers, coming across the prairie and whatnot. They took away part of the negotiation to make Utah a state. They took away that pardon power because they were concerned it was a felony, at the time to engage in polygamous marriages. And so they were worried that if they gave the governor of Utah the pardon power, all these people they were prosecuting for plural marriages would just, pardon everybody. So we could change that state constitution, but right now that's how we're kind of restricted on that. But it's a great question.
Is that really plural marriages? Is that, I guess that's a big deal in Utah, but why? Why is that so? Like, to me, that's consenting adults. I know it's plural, it's consenting adults but we're all on board. America's all on board with the idea of it takes a village to raise a child. Mm-hmm. I like, to me, if people want to live in a way where you have a legally binding relationship with another person, I don't think one could negate necessarily the other one. It doesn't have to. Like, we create the rules, we create the laws. So kind of like, is that a big deal in Utah? Is there like a big group of, I know there's a big group that definitely practice it, but is there a big outrage against them? I thought Utah was pretty much kind of lockstep with that's Mormon country. And I know there's fundamentalists and non-fundamentalists. So can you go into that a little bit?
Well, I want to say it comes up as an issue on occasion, and it's still a live issue. I wouldn't call it a big issue, but there definitely are competing factions, and legitimately they are worried about the child brides, right? And folks who are maybe abusing the concept of plural marriage to engage in, abuse of young people who don't know any better. So there are people who try to rescue people out of that situation, or survivors of that situation, who are just trying to police, those abuses. And I get that and respect that. On the flip side, one of my early careers, I shouldn't say career choices, things I got to do as a lawyer, there was a libertarian mayor of a small town in Utah called Bigwater, Willie Starr Marshall, and he hired me as the town attorney. And they are well known for being a polygamous community. They're kind of more new agey polygamists, though. So they don't do the welfare fraud. They don't do the child brides. But that was kind of their tradition. Their patriarch before that, Alex Joseph, had, about a dozen sister wives. One of them was an attorney, by the way. One of them was a real estate agent. Very smart people, actually. And you interact with folks from these communities, and they seem to kind of know what's up. Seem to have a lot of wealth and are doing well for themselves. So, I see them and they're doing successful and they're thriving. And then you hear the stories of abuse and they're a little more hidden away. And I think just the libertarian solution is let them come out of the shadows, and you're going to see, less of those abusive practices go on. So I wouldn't call it a big issue, but it's still a live legal issue, in that I don't think Utah legally recognizes plural marriage, but there is some case precedent suggesting that the state cannot punish it, cannot criminalize it. So it's still kind of in limbo. I will say, just as, I would rather the government get out of the marriage business and take it back to where, we didn't have to seek the state's permission for that. I don't know that we're there, just politically yet. But if there was a bill that came across my desk doing that, I would sign it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Didn't the LDS, the Mormon Church, technically say we aren't doing in that business anymore, polygamous marriages?
My understanding is, they disavowed that as a practice.
So, I mean, to me, I think of millennials and younger folks, and the housing crisis that we face, and the realities of like what it means to start a family. It's almost, most millennials that I know are in a roommate situation already, myself included, where you have people that you're not related to living in your house. And a lot of people think, oh, marriage is all about sex and babies and everything. No, not really. It doesn't have to be. It can be about, combining financial situations, getting houses together. And the way that our economy is, like, it, for someone my age and younger, the idea of buying a house for yourself, or a dwelling, whether it's an apartment or a trailer or a house or whatever, that's expensive. That's a really big undertaking. A lot of folks don't have the credit for it. A lot of folks definitely don't have the cash for it, and they can't get a loan for it. So when you bring your resources together, pull them together, and if you can prove it in a legally binding contract like marriage, for instance, right, it gives you more buying power. It gives you that opportunity to purchase a house, right? So my first house that I bought, I would never have been able to purchase it by myself, but I was married, and I had, that's two sources of incomes that come in. When you go for a loan, that they look at all the sources of income. Could you imagine the kind of the even better of a house that we could have gotten if we had a third or a fourth, source of income that was like legally coming into this house? That would be really that the government doesn't have to make everything about morality, as far as you can be bound to people without having sex with them. Let me just say that. Okay.
You can also be married to people without the government involved. When the whole gay marriage thing came out, everybody was talking about gays should be allowed to be married. And I said, you're missing a perfect opportunity. Marriage should be in the church only, and civil union, if you decide to have one, which have the tax benefits and business case, should be done by the government. If you call yourself married, that should be between you, your family, and your God. It has nothing to do with government. If you also want to engage in a civil union, then that's also a decision. But the government needs to get out of the marriage business. It's none of their business who I marry or who I don't marry. So,
and Feena, maybe just back to your point on accessible housing, these cottage court homes that we're promoting through this project, and I think there's a national organization, the Better Cities Project, that's kind of pushing this as well. But during our debate, the incumbent governor talked about starter homes in Utah at $300,000. Well, that's sticker shock still for a lot of us. And these tiny homes would be less than six figures, right? So that would be maybe even a year's salary for many people. And so they wouldn't have to necessarily combine into some kind of relationship. But if they did, one thing I'm promoting through my website, concept I really love, are these intentional communities. You can go on that website, ic.org, and they're sprouting up all over. We have a couple here in Utah where people are just kind of going off the grid. You've seen some of Derek Bros and that Live Free movement, homesteading and whatnot. I think that's maybe a solution for people. And coming back to mutual aid societies, those had a great tradition in the United States. They were kind of crowded out by state-sponsored welfare services, but those could, they do still exist Think of Kiwanis Club and think of the Lions Club and organizations like that. There's probably others I'm forgetting. But those are, those build community, right? Rather than just, saying, well, let the government take care of it. Let a bureaucrat take care of it. So those are things I'm, trying to promote as well. And this is through a concept called underthrowing the government. So we're not overthrowing the government. We are, growing civil society in a peaceful way where we don't need to rely on, taxation and coercion to meet, community needs. So that's one thing I'm kind of promoting, again, as a way to cure government overreach. Let's shrink government to the fact that if it overreaches, it's not a big deal.
Yes. So I'm pulling up your website real quick. But as soon as it comes up. So what made you decide to go libertarian? What's your history and experience in the party? And, what's some of your favorite things about the Libertarian Party and why you chose the Libertarian Party opposed to Republicans and Democrats?
Well, being born and raised in Utah, I call myself a recovering Republican. So I thought that was my, original political identity. And then you could say in law school, I finally put a word to it when I discovered Richard Epstein. Richard Epstein, for those who don't know, he's kind of a well-known legal scholar, and he writes a property textbook. So when you study things like property and torts and criminal law in law school, one of the well-known property textbooks is by Epstein. So, and then that got me introduced to the Federal Society, which he's been a member of. And the Federal Society, for those who don't know, is kind of a scholarship community for libertarian and conservative lawyers and judges and law students. And they have these great events and conferences where they get together and they debate legal issues. And it was formed because those conservative and libertarian points of view were being kind of excluded from law schools, which are predominantly of just a different point of view. So this was just to say, hey, let's have a space where we can kind of have our views being aired. So so that helped me with a name, put a name to where I was philosophically. But I tell people about my origin story. I was a columnist. Well, no, I was backing even further in high school debate. In my senior year, it was agricultural policy, and my debate partner and I were looking at the various topics we could choose, and we ended up choosing cannabis legalization of all things. We didn't choose bioregions, and we didn't choose soil erosion. Cannabis legalization seemed interesting. And what kind of helped us there is we said, gosh, so something might be a social ill, but maybe making it illegal is not the best way to address that social ill. So that exposed me to that line of thinking. Although just in this campaign, and again, one of the reasons I'm running for governor is as a family defender, I interact with Child Protective Service agencies and then what we call in Utah DCFS, which I call the Department of Child and Family Separation, because I don't see them necessarily helping to keep families together more than trying to tear them apart. And there's a very unfortunate story in Utah's history, and this happened when I was 8 years old. And a guy by the name of John Singer, he immigrated over from Germany, and he and his family, they were in school, and they decided that the government schools weren't really teaching the values that they liked. It was making their family too worldly, perhaps. And you can, by the way, read about this. I think it's a free book online. You can get it through the Open Library, archive.org, called Death of an American, I believe is the title. And so he pulled his kids out of the schools. At that time, we still had mandatory schooling. You couldn't just opt out. And so he got back and forth with it with both the school district and then the local sheriff's office. Anyway, long story short, they had a confrontation at his home, and he was shot and killed by a sheriff's deputy. And that created all kinds of drama going forward. But I remember that well. I remember my father being very disturbed by that, and just the community very traumatized by that episode, thinking, gosh, what rights do we have as parents? And as it turns out, the U.S. Constitution treats family integrity as a fundamental right. This is a right on par with freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And so that means when the government interferes with that family integrity, they have to meet that strict scrutiny standard for the actions that they take. Now, regrettably, the courts have not caught up to that reality. And so we still see way too many families being torn apart. And, the younger members, given out to politically favored couples in the community. And I call it state-sponsored child trafficking. And so because that division of child and family separation is under the governor's office, I think that's where I can have the biggest impact in trying to address those abuses, I think, of Utah families and engaging in a practice of what I call benevolent terror, where they say it's for your own good, but they're really terrorizing families. And just back to the criminal defense part, sometimes I will watch these body-worn camera videos and they're interacting with my clients, and then they learn that they have children. And so one of the things that the police officer does is, do you want to comply with us and cooperate, or do we need to take your kids away? Which is just this, very coercive and unfortunate practice that they engage in. So trying to raise awareness of that practice. And I think if more of us become aware of that practice, we can hopefully bring about an end to that practice.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So I do have your website. I'm going to pull that up real quick. Share screen. Boom. And this is at Latham for Utahns.us. Got a nice little picture here. This is your website. Donate, subscribe. What we got? Okay. Now is the time. This is the place. Yes.
And just for those, this is the place as kind of the Utah saint. So supposedly when Brigham Young, led those wagon trains across the prairies into the Salt Lake Valley, and they stopped at the top of what's called Immigration Canyon, he looked out on that valley and said, this is the place.
Yeah. Yeah. Javier Milei as president of Argentina. If you folks don't know, that's the first libertarian president in the world. Setting the blaze, jury nullification. See that? Non-aggression principle. Love that.
I just love your sign, man. Govern the state, liberate the people. That makes sense to me. That speaks to me. So that's wonderful. And I'm going to steal that, by the way. In case
have at it. So, it's there to share.
But he's got liberator scrawled across the top. That's awesome.
Latham for governor. This is about your debate stage. Let's see. Let's go to the about page. Utah native. Okay. Born in 1969. Just told your age. Hello. In Salt Lake City to a family that operated Utah's first care facility for vulnerable adults. After attending schools in Utah and Arizona, Rob earned degrees from the University of Southern California and S.J. Quinley College of Law at the University of Utah with the help of scholarship and student loans. Here we go. Legacy of leadership and service. So you were representing the town in civil matters. After years of traditional criminal defense practice, Rob pursued an opportunity to practice in Washington County's juvenile courts. So you know what you're talking about when it comes to the criminal justice system and the family court system that's out here in America. It's not just Utah; it's all over America.
Yeah, and I have 30 years of lived experience as an attorney.
Yeah. So I think most of the family care services or the the foster care programs, I don't know of any of them in any state. I know each one of them are run by the state, but I don't know any of them that their end goal is not to reunite the children with the original parent. And you've already brought up the fact that it's failing to do that, but it's also it hurts the people that are in the kids. It hurts the kids because they're being taken between two different people, two different groups, their original family plus this other family. And maybe they're cool, maybe they're great, but at some point you got to step outside yourself, the adult in this situation, and realize that this is a kid is maybe changing schools, and they have a whole life that they have to build a foundation on. And when you're moving the kid around and you're telling them, don't listen to that person because they're wrong, don't listen to this person because they're wrong, and these guys are bad, and it turns into everyone's bad, everyone's wrong. And it's just not a ideal situation in my mind. The family court system is set up in a way that I don't think that they're benefiting the child enough. You know, I do realize and I do accept that there are situations where children should be removed from homes, 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
In
And
so
I've
many
seen
of
a
those
handful of those
situations,
cases. Yeah.
you don't want that kid to go back to that home. You do not want to reunite that child with the parent if they are taken for a valid reason, you know, a good reason. The end goal should not be to reunite the child with the parent. But then there's other situations that we've kind of talked around a little bit. Like I remember just maybe 2-3 years ago, it was really big in the news about medical marijuana patients having their children taken away because they are taking medical marijuana, which I do want to give you props. I feel like every libertarian's path has a little bit to do with some school project somewhere that they decided to do cannabis. They decided to do it on cannabis, whether it's the tax benefits or like the criminal justice system, how it could be reformed with legalization of cannabis. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and giving a great interview. And so for Utah, what kind of issues, policies, and changes would you want to implement as a libertarian for the people of Utah?
Well, and you know, when a lot of people, you know, we may again be the first libertarians that a lot of people become aware of for the first time. And one of my public policy former colleagues, still friends, Alex Tabarrok, he's now at George Mason University. He and Tyler Cowen have a blog, and they've even created it into a online university, and I think it's now even a podcast called Marginal Revolution. And so there's just a reality that we want to see certain changes to make our world a better place. But, you know, the marginal revolution theme is you're going to take small steps toward that. And we all do this in our daily lives when we need to replace an outdated piece of equipment, you know, or we buy a newer car than we had before. So, you know, there's a reality that if the people of Utah were to put me to work as governor of the state of Utah, liberator for the people of Utah, I would still be working with a legislature that is predominantly Republican and also some Democrats. But I've counted the noses in that body, and you might say it's split about evenly between what I would call liberty-minded legislators and establishment-minded legislators. So there may be a coalition that I can work with to have that marginal revolution and move things in a more liberty-minded direction in Utah. So we can make sure that we have a government that is less extractive, less repressive, less intrusive, and less abusive. And so, you know, there are a lot of legislators out there who have bills that are being, you know, if not vetoed by this governor, just the signals made that you're never going to get it into committee, and so don't even try. Maybe those bills will now have more life, and again, they'll return more autonomy to the people of Utah, more wealth to the people of Utah. The Utah Taxpayers Association issued its pork barrel report. They haven't done one for this year, but the 2023 report says that Utah's budget grew 93% in the past 5 years. So it's in the 20-something billion dollars. And they have a nice paragraph in there saying that the Utah legislature and the state government has just shown that they lack any kind of restraint on government spending. So for these so-called fiscal conservatives up there, they really haven't shown that they have the ability to be fiscally conservative. And so I would definitely be one looking at state spending, because that spending obviously displaces our ability to, you know, operate in a civil society and to spend our money as we see fit, not as, you know, the politically favored see fit. And obviously talking about DCFS, I mean, getting back to that, I've met, by the way, some great foster parents. So I don't uniformly want to condemn all of them. Sometimes I'm like, gosh, would you adopt me? They're so great. But there is this growing trend, unfortunately, of people who want to adopt, and they're realizing that a path they can use to adopt is to become a foster parent, and then that way, if the reunification fails, and in Utah, sadly, we're under the national average. So 41% of children who are removed from their home come back home. That means the majority, 59%, don't come back home. They're separated. And even if we talk about the situation where maybe the child shouldn't go back home with an abusive parent, which is just very rare, by the way, in my experience. So yes, does it happen? I've seen some very terrible cases, but I could still count them on one hand down here in southern Utah. But there's this thing called ambiguous loss, the primal wound, and children not knowing who their parent is, even though if they live out there. So that can be remedied by what's called permanent custody and guardianship, where you can have open adoption. And that way there's that physical separation. So the child's still protected from a harmful parent, but they know that parent's there. And then as the child, of course, grows older, becomes able to, protect themselves, advocate for themselves, they can have that relationship in a way that makes the most sense for them. So those are some of the things. I'd also just want to throw out a book recommendation. I'm just a big reader. There's a book called Corruptible by Brian Klaas, Klaas. And it talks about just the people that are attracted to political power. And he talked, and government service. And just F.A. Hayek actually wrote a similar essay called Why the Worst Get on Top. And this is kind of an updated version on that. Just the dark triad personality traits that attract power. And so how might we make a government that attracts, people who aren't corruptible or less corruptible? And he talks about things like sortition, which is the ancient Greeks, drawing names out of the hat, democratic lotteries, and think about how more representative that kind of system would be. We can have democracy without elections. So those are some maybe curatives, again, to make our communities a better place. So those are just some ideas. Of course, people can go to my website and look at more on what kind of things I'm promoting and what I would be in support of.
Yes, and I do have your website, your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that scrolling at the bottom, folks. So please go and check that out. If you are in Utah or if you know someone in Utah, please let them know that there's a libertarian on the ballot that needs your vote for the good of America. And
thank you, Feena. Thank you, Mike. And I'll break some news. I just learned last night that our candidate for Attorney General, our Libertarian candidate for Attorney General, also qualified for the debate. It'll be a four-way debate. And our Libertarian candidate 4 years ago actually ran as a Democrat this time. So he's going to be on the stage. So that'll be really fun. That's
an interesting debate.
Yes.
That would be an interesting debate.
I'm getting my popcorn.
Everybody always thanks me for my service. They thank Feena for her service, but over 30 years of service as an attorney, as a child advocate, as a counselor, dude, I'm in awe. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. I appreciate the book recommendations, and I'm a fan. Vote Libertarian in Utah for governor. Rob Latham.
Thank you both for your service too. Good to be with you.
Rob, you want to tell folks where to find you one more time in the solo layout? Say your name, what you're running for, and go.
Sure. My name's Rob Latham, and I am the Libertarian candidate for governor of the state of Utah. You can find me online at freeutahns.org.
All right. Well, I'm going to cut to a commercial real quick. One last commercial. Thank you so much for coming on. And before we're done with this show, we got to do one more commercial for Liquid Freedom.
Whoa, I'm in solo layout now.
Why are you in solo? Why are you solo? There we go. Well, folks, that's the show for the day. I hope you have learned something. I hope you've taken away something that you go check out these candidates. Check out the Libertarian Party. Share it on your social media. Help where you can. Volunteer, donate. like, share, comment, all that good stuff. It's all, like I said earlier, we are making mountains out of molehills, and we can't do it without you. And I want to thank you all for watching today. And I'm going to play one more commercial, and then we're going to just get on out of here, if that's all right. So see you all next Tuesday. Thank you.
Wait, if you guys love what we say, tell others, because we don't have 20 million to advertise. And if you don't like what we say, tell us, because we're listening. We want to earn your vote. Vote Libertarian.
All right.
This is the most important election to vote third party. This is our chance, Florida, to give America someone you can trust in the United States Senate. Let's give the U.S. Senate a libertarian from Florida with love. I'm Feena Benoit, and I approve this message.
See you next Tuesday.
You got 2 minutes. You don't want to give any last words? Or
It's 2 minutes of outro.
Oh, heck, you're right. Gosh, I'm crazy today. See you next Tuesday.